41% of the one-parent families are women that are struggling to provide just necessities for their children. I want to tell you that my children get an allowance and they handle it better than this provincial government has handled this budget. Please explain to me, Mr. Moe, how this short-sighted decision will benefit anyone in Saskatchewan. It will cost more in dollars. It will cost much, much more in the terms of our humanity and our compassion. I, for one, am not willing to stand by while this government takes more from our most vulnerable citizens. I am not a politician, but Sheri Benson is. And she's one of the good ones that leads with her heart and stands up to speak for those voices who are not heard. Sheri?
Thanks, Fran, for those words and for really spelling out in black and white why we're here today. I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to share with you and to really talk about the commitment people have shown to really hold their governments to account and for their responsibility to ensure every Canadian has access to a safe, affordable place to call home. I also want to acknowledge the land in which we're gathered here today as Treaty 6 territory and the ancestral homeland of the Métis. 235,000 Canadians will experience homelessness in Canada this year. Each one of these individuals is experiencing the effects of governments failing to protect their basic human rights. Over 1.7 million Canadians spend more than a third of their income on housing. And they're spending that third of their income on housing that is either unsafe, substandard, or overcrowded. And of those 1.7 million Canadians, 400,000 Canadians are spending more than 50% of their income on this inadequate and unsafe housing. These folks find themselves with no options in their community, and as Fran spoke of, these households are overrepresented by women, single women who are parents, Indigenous people, newcomers, those living with a disability, and by seniors. Housing affordability and homelessness is a crisis in Canada, and both the federal and provincial governments must step up sooner rather than later. But unfortunately, we don't see the urgency, nor have we seen the leadership to really address this crisis. Instead, we see our governments either slowly stepping in, or in the case of our own provincial government, actually stepping away from the leadership and the support our communities need to truly address the issue as the crisis it is. I was hopeful, as maybe some of you were here today, that when the Prime Minister stated last year that housing rights were human rights and that one person living on the street was one person too many, I was hopeful that we would see our government aggressively step in and invest in what most of us have called a crisis. That for far too many Canadians, there are no options of the street. But instead, we've seen a government investing a very small amount of new money spread over a very long 10-year time horizon. A federal government who has spent the last year not stepping in, but stepping back from a true commitment to the right to housing. And now, to add insult to injury, our provincial government is pulling back and will no longer be offering the much-needed rental housing supplement. And of course, we all know that support for new folks ended this July. And of course, they herald this as, saving the government $5 million. But those of us here today, the many, many experts right across Canada, the many advocates, know that we will pay in higher emergency health costs and health costs in general. An investment in providing and supporting people with stable housing, on average, pays back at a rate for every dollar invested in housing saves almost $2 in other costs. And of course, this doesn't mention or quantify the human costs, which are more often felt by women and families and seniors and those living with disabilities. I was personally shocked when our provincial government gave as a reason for this short-sighted move the anticipation of the national rollout of a national housing benefit. So I want to share a couple of very important points here. First of all, the rental supplement for new applicants has ended. The national housing benefit, of which we have no idea how much it will be or who it will be shared with, won't roll out until the year 2020. That's after the next federal election. And secondly, as was touted to much fanfare last year, the National Housing Strategy and its investments was meant to enhance, to strengthen, to build on programs that are already in place because, as I've said, we're in a crisis. So this recent move by our provincial government seems to contradict this understanding. The more cynical in me, which, I try to keep it in check as much as possible, it's getting harder and harder to do, would see this move by the provincial government as removing the rental supplement program prior to negotiating an agreement with the federal government for national housing strategy dollars. I think most of us were under the understanding that we were going to be working together and that the national housing strategy would be built on current supports. And it really is to this point that I have alerted the federal minister responsible for the national housing strategy, Minister Duclos, to ensure that the provincial government doesn't get away with using federal dollars to replace funding for the rental supplement, not as it's supposed to be stated, and that is to enhance and improve upon this important support for those struggling to get safe, affordable housing, which is everyone's human right. Of the $40 billion announced for investment in the National Housing Strategy, only $11 billion, I know these are big numbers, but as I stated earlier, we're in a crisis. Just think of those big numbers. 1.7 million Canadians are spending more than 30% of their income on inadequate housing. So of the $40 billion announced for investment in the National Housing Strategy, only $11.2 billion is actually new money, and it is spread over 10 years for the entire country. It is not enough to both replace, as I'm suggesting the provincial government might be thinking, replace the rental supplement funding in Saskatchewan, and it will definitely not be enough to enhance the rental support through national housing benefit. And I think most of us thought the federal government would be working with our provinces to stack benefits together because we know people are struggling. So today I want to tell you what you can do, or what we can do. First, we really need to make sure the federal government negotiates a housing agreement with this provincial government that builds new supports and doesn't negotiate an agreement that will not improve housing benefits and housing outcomes in this province. Let the Prime Minister know, let Minister Duclos know, through your emails, through your phone calls, through your letters, that this is simply not acceptable, and make sure you let your Member of Parliament know. We must also let the Minister of Social Services, the Honourable Paul Merriman, and our MLAs know that we want a housing agreement with the federal government that builds in new supports. And we also want to ensure that those who haven't lost their rental supplement will not lose this support if they move, or if and when we see a national housing benefit roll out. We must do whatever we can to keep this issue front and center for all governments. So I want to thank Fran and the folks here, and I know we're going to hear from Kathy Sproul, an MLA here in Saskatoon. We want to keep this issue front and center for all governments. That's both the federal and the provincial governments, and it wouldn't hurt to let our municipal governments know that this is not acceptable. We owe it to the over 14,000 plus friends and neighbors who depend on the rental supplement, who had hope the federal government would build on that rental supplement. And of course, we owe it to the thousands more who are being left behind because the housing crisis is being ignored by the federal and provincial government. Thank you very much.